welcome to History on Blast, episode number 28. A little curse never hurt anybody. I'm Hillary, and I'll be your host, as on this episode, we put 120 years-ish worth of presidents on blast, and also specifically William Henry Harrison and Zachary Taylor. You'll find out why in a minute. First, actually, I'm not going to jump straight into this month in history. I have a little bit of housekeeping I want to do first. That is, you may have noticed that the updating schedule shifted at some point because I was away and I just switched weeks. That is how things are going to continue here on out. Also, to those of you who are on the Patreon, I do know that an episode did not go up for June. That will go up fairly soon. Expect to see 2 in the month of July since I missed June. Also, there will be a Patreon episode for August, but there will not be any episodes in the main feed during the month of August because I'm moving. And that's a lot, honestly. So I'm probably not going to be able to record an episode for you. If I have time, a bonus episode might show up, but don't expect it. I'll also say that my allergies are currently kicking my ass, so my voice may sound a little odd, and hopefully I'll cut out all of the coughing, but just understand that that's where I'm at. So, this month in history. On July 8th, 1776, the Liberty Bell was rung in what is now called Independence Hall, but was then known simply as the Pennsylvania State House, to summon the citizenry of Philadelphia to hear the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. The document had actually been adopted 4 days prior, but they didn't ring the bell to announce it until it returned from the printer. The reader, on that fateful day, was a man named Colonel John Nixon, and the words he read would echo through history.
Hey, Warren.
Hey, Kay.
Did you know that Cats and Les Mis are sung through musicals? And did you know that the musical Guys and Dolls was written by the same guy who wrote Baby It's Cold Outside?
I have no idea what any of those words mean.
Warren, we covered this on Tone Deaf last week.
I don't remember what I had for breakfast last week. You expect me to remember musicals last week?
Listen to Tone Deaf, a theater nerd's guide for their musically challenged spouse, and expand your knowledge of musical theater.
Or just laugh as I struggle to remember that one show about the Cobras.
I still have no idea what you're talking about.
Tune in every Wednesday to Tone Deaf.
Okay, so we're going to start with a little background. First off, what we're talking about is the Curse of Tippecanoe, which goes by like 12 different names. It's also called Tecumseh's Curse, the 0-Year Curse, the 20-Year Curse. But basically, no matter how you slice it, the basic idea is that it's a curse that came about as a result of William Henry Harrison's war against the Native American Confederacy as led by Tecumseh. So I guess we're going to have to step back and talk about that first. So we're talking about a period in the early 1800s, specifically around what is called Tecumseh's War or Tecumseh's Rebellion. Although I'm going to be real, Tecumseh's War is a much more accurate name for it, because calling it Tecumseh's Rebellion sort of presumes that he had any reason to be, like, loyal to the American government in the first place, which he absolutely did not. But he was a leader of what was called Tecumseh's Confederacy, which was a large association of different Native American tribal groups who had come together to form more or less their own country to tell the Americans living on the East Coast to get the fuck off and not come through the plains and head west, which was exactly what the Americans wanted to be doing because, you know, Conestoga wagon trains and Oregon or bust, ford the river and die. So while we have a whole bunch of pioneers who are very eager and excited to go die of dysentery, we have a bunch of Native Americans who really don't want them here at all. And a war breaks out because, as we all know, the pioneers can't stop, won't stop, and have the backing of a large army with guns. So that's kind of how they decide to solve their problems. Which ends with the death of Tecumseh at the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811. You may be familiar with Tippecanoe, partially because it is easily one of the funniest words I ever heard in AP history, and also because it was part of the worst campaign slogan I've ever heard, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, which I'll give them points for the fact that I still remember it this long after I graduated high school. We're not going to talk about how long that is, but I remember it, and that's the important part. The Tippecanoe in that equation is the Battle of Tippecanoe. The Tyler is Zachary Tyler. Now, technically speaking, in the political slogan, the campaign slogan, Tippecanoe is actually referring to William Henry Harrison. He was a candidate for the Whig Party, and he was elected to the presidency because everybody really liked him for killing a bunch of Native Americans, I guess. But this is where things get fun and wild. So, William Henry Harrison was elected president in 1840. By 1841, he was dead. He barely lasted his presidency. You may recall that presidents are inaugurated, sworn into office in January of the year following the election. He was elected in 1840. He was sworn into office January of 1841. He was dead by April. So, the next president elected in a year that ends with a 0, Abraham Lincoln. Well, we all know how that goes, don't we? After Abraham Lincoln, the next president we get is James A. Garfield, elected in 1880, assassinated July 2nd, 1881 at 9:30 in the morning by a man named Charles J. Guiteau at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. He died by the time he'd reached New Jersey. In 1900, we have the election of William McKinley, who was assassinated September 6th, 1901. It took him 8 days to die, and on September 14th, he died of gangrene caused by gunshot wounds. He was the third American president to have been assassinated following Abraham Lincoln and James A. Garfield, who all seem to have fallen under this curse. McKinley was also known for his annexation of Hawaii and his involvement in the exploration of Alaska. The mountain known as Denali was actually, for a period of its history, known as Mount McKinley, although that name change has been reversed. Next up, we have Warren G. Harding. He managed to make it through at least a few years of his presidency. Elected in 1920, he served until August 2nd of 1923, when he died of a heart attack. Following that, we have possibly the most impressive member of this list, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, elected to his third term in office in 1940, died during his fourth term in office of a cerebral hemorrhage on April 12th, 1945. Interestingly, Franklin Delano Roosevelt is also the only American president to have ever served more than 2 terms, and after his presidency, the actual law which limits the president to 2 terms was put into place. The rationale for that, interestingly, wasn't a limitation of power on the office of the president. It was out of respect for George Washington, who only served 2 terms. After FDR, we have the 1960 election of John F. Kennedy, and again, I think we all know how that one ends, on November 22nd of 1963, when he was assassinated during a trip to Dallas in Dealey Plaza. After that, we have the 1980 election of Ronald Reagan, who, interestingly, is the first president in this list to survive There are some stories that he broke the curse, assuming that you believe in one. Although he did suffer several assassination attempts, and the Alzheimer's that would eventually be the cause of his death did start during his term in office, according to his son. The 2000 election of George W. Bush would be the next one in line, but again, he is still living and survived all of the assassination attempts made against him. If we are to assume that the curse was not in fact broken by Ronald Reagan's survival of his term in office, then the next president who would come into the sights of the Curse of Tecumseh would be whoever is elected in 2020. Personally, I wouldn't want to be them, just in case, but we'll have to sit back and see what happens. I will say, though, to whoever is out there campaigning, just remember, Chief Tecumseh has his eye on you. And that's just about going to do it for this episode. As always, if you've got any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all, you can find me at History on Blast on Twitter, or you can email me at historyonblast@gmail.com. We've got a fantastic Facebook group going full of memes and comedy. Feel free to join us there. We've also been talking about upcoming episodes there, tossing around some ideas. If you like History on Blast so much that you want more, you can always check us out on Patreon. There's one episode up there right now, and you're guaranteed 2 more this month. As always, I would like to thank Defy Them All for the use of their song Keeper of Histories for the intro and outro of our program. And thank you for listening. And as a reminder, we will be dark for the month of August in the normal feed, but there will be a Patreon episode for August. Thank you.